The gunfire had stopped 3 hours earlier, but inside the hospital boardroom, the real battle was only beginning. Nurse Elena Cross stood alone at the center of a long table surrounded by suits, her hands cuffed at the wrists not by metal, but by silence, by suspicion, by the weight of 11 people who owed her their lives and did not yet know it. She had been stripped of her badge that morning. She had been called reckless, insubordinate, a liability. And in less than 60 seconds, one man in dress blues was about to change everything. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the quiet heroes the world too often overlooks, hit that like button right now, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Midnight Tales so you never miss a story like this one. 6 months earlier, Elena had walked the halls of Grace Memorial Hospital the way she always did, quietly, efficiently, without seeking praise. She was 34 years old, a single mother raising an 8-year-old son named Caleb, and a nurse who had spent 12 years learning that the smallest kindnesses often mattered the most. She remembered patients' birthdays. She held the hands of the dying when their families could not make it in time. She was, by every account that did not appear on paper, the soul of the third floor. But paper was exactly what would nearly destroy her. It happened on a Tuesday evening in March. A man named Victor Reyes, high on desperation and grief after losing his wife to a botched surgery 2 years prior, walked into the hospital lobby with a duffel bag and a gun he had bought off the street with money he did not have. He was not a hardened criminal. He was a broken man who believed, in his shattered logic, that taking hostages would force the hospital administration to finally listen to him. Within minutes, 11 people were trapped in the third-floor recovery wing, Elena among them, along with 3 patients too fragile to move, 2 visiting family members, and a wounded off-duty Marine named Sergeant Daniel Ashford who had come in that morning for a follow-up on a training injury. The official reports would later say that hospital security failed to respond in time, that police negotiators were delayed by traffic, that the situation spiraled for nearly 40 minutes before any outside help arrived. What the reports did not say, at least not at first, was what happened inside that wing while the world outside held its breath. Elena did not scream. She did not freeze. She looked at Victor Reyes, a man clutching a gun with trembling hands, and she saw not a monster, but a patient. She saw someone in the grip of something larger than himself, and 12 years of nursing had taught her that the most dangerous moments are the ones where nobody dares to speak gently. So she spoke gently. She asked about his wife. She asked her name. She did not do this because she was fearless, she was terrified, her pulse hammering so loud she thought he could hear it. She did it because the alternative, silence, panic, provoking a man with nothing left to lose, was a risk none of them could survive. While she kept Victor talking, something else was happening beneath the surface. Sergeant Ashford, bleeding slightly from a reopened wound but sharp-eyed and trained for exactly this kind of chaos, was watching every angle of the room. He noticed the supply closet door that led to a service corridor. He noticed the moment Victor's attention would drift toward the window, toward the police cars gathering below, toward the reporters. And in the smallest gaps of that attention, Elena began moving people. Not all at once. Not obviously. She would ask to check a patient's for and, in doing so, guide them 2 feet closer to the closet door. She would offer water to a frightened visitor and use the motion to shield movement. Piece by piece, breath by breath, she was emptying that room without Victor ever noticing the walls closing in around his plan. It took 31 minutes. 31 minutes of Elena's voice staying level while her hands shook beneath the table she leaned against. 31 minutes of trusting a wounded stranger to read her signals, to time his movements, to catch a falling elderly patient without a sound. When the police finally breached the corridor, they found Victor Reyes alone in the recovery wing, disarmed by Ashford in the final chaotic seconds, and 11 hostages already safe in the stairwell, shepherded there by a nurse whose name would not appear in a single news headline that night. Instead, what appeared in the hospital's internal report, filed by an administrator who had not been in the room and who feared liability more than he valued truth, was a different story. Elena Cross had violated emergency protocol. She had left her assigned post. She had made unauthorized decisions during a security incident without waiting for official clearance. Within a week, she was suspended pending investigation, her badge confiscated, her name quietly circulated among staff as someone who had caused problems during the crisis. Caleb asked her every night why she came home crying, and every night she told him it would be fine, even as she lay awake wondering if it would. That was the woman who stood in the boardroom on the morning the hospital board finally convened to decide her fate. The director, a tired man named Franklin Whitmore who had spent the week fielding legal threats and press inquiries, looked around the table and asked the question that had been haunting the entire investigation. He asked who had actually saved the hostages that night, because nobody in that room, despite all their paperwork, seemed to have a clear answer. It was then that Sergeant Daniel Ashford, still recovering, still walking with a slight limp, stepped through the boardroom doors uninvited. He had heard, through a nurse who remembered his kindness, that Elena was about to lose everything for the very thing that had saved his life. He walked past the stunned assistants, past the lawyers shuffling papers, and stood beside the woman everyone in that room had already decided to blame. When Whitmore repeated his question, who saved the hostages, Ashford did not hesitate. He raised his hand and pointed directly at Elena, and in a voice steady with the same discipline that had carried him through 2 deployments, he told them the truth. He told them she had kept a broken man calm with nothing but her voice. He told them she had moved 11 terrified people to safety without a single one of them realizing they were being saved. He told them that in 20 years of service, he had rarely seen courage like hers, and that if the hospital punished her for it, they would be telling every nurse in that building that kindness was a liability instead of the very thing medicine was supposed to be about. The room was silent for a long moment. Elena, who had steeled herself for humiliation, felt something break open in her chest instead, not sorrow this time, but disbelief, and beneath it, something like hope daring to surface after weeks of being buried. Whitmore looked at the reports in front of him, thick with procedural language and fear-driven caution, and set them aside. The suspension was lifted that same afternoon. Weeks later, at a hospital ceremony that Elena almost did not attend out of habit and humility, she was given not just her badge back, but a commendation, and Caleb sat in the front row watching his mother be recognized for exactly the kind of person he had always known her to be. If this story touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that quiet courage is still courage, please take a moment to like this video and leave a comment. It genuinely means the world to us and helps this story reach someone who might need it today. Before we go, we have one small request. Comment the word "grace" below if you believe every hospital, every workplace, every community needs more people like Elena in it. In the months that followed, Elena Cross returned to the 3rd floor of Grace Memorial, not as a cautionary tale, but as a reminder to everyone who worked there that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is simply refuse to stop being kind, even when the room is full of fear, even when no one is watching, even when the paperwork says otherwise.